it did well. Then I started getting advertisers like this Catelli's, this spaghetti brand,
Spaghetti brand?
like reached out. They're
Man,
like,
go
oh,
Catelli?
yeah. They're like,
That's
oh,
actually
want to sponsor? Yeah.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Foreign Gems Pod, brought to you by Mac and Ola.
Macaroni sounds like mac and cheese.
Bro, I keep getting mac and cheese every time I introduce myself, man. Yeah, I went out with one of my roommates and his friend was like, oh, your name's Mac? And then way later in the night, like when we got a little bit more comfortable with each other, he was like, this whole night I've been trying to say mac and cheese. I've been trying to call you mac and cheese. I was like, whose cheese? It's like, Paco's cheese. It's like, what?
Oh my God.
That's ridiculous.
Where
man.
do people get this urge from? I actually never thought of saying that until now, like
Mac
ever.
and cheese, man. I also got Junior Max a lot.
Oh yeah, that. Well, I mean, your name is Junior, so
I was like,
that was kind of
bro.
your fault.
I was like, call me Big Mac. Anyways, completely off topic. Today, what are we gonna talk about, Alan?
I don't know. You're the one with the topic
I was the one
today.
that came with the topic. Like we mentioned before in our disclosures, these things are a little last minute, especially the topic ones. Sometimes we actually spend some time preparing when we know we're gonna have a guest on or something like that. But to keep the conversation as organic as possible, I like to bring the topic up like last minute. Ola will send me a topic like last minute, like either day before or day of, and then we decide we're gonna talk about it. But since today I was the one with the spontaneous idea, I'll introduce it. We want to talk to you today about content, and more specifically, content creation. The last couple episodes, actually, maybe not the one that we just recorded last, because that was a guest episode, but the few episodes before that, we were talking about ways, you can make a little bit of income, make a name for yourself, make a brand type of thing, and I think content creation fits quite nicely in that discussion. So I think it's a natural time to talk about it. Not only that, but the previous guest that we had on is a content creator in a way, so
Right.
it's a nice follow-up to that discussion, because I don't think we actually got into the content creation portion as much with our guest as we will today.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was my reason for bringing it up, and yeah, I'm excited to get into it with you. Both of us have tried some form of content creation. Maybe we can start there, tell our stories about like how we've done content in the past, and then talk about a little, like some more ideas about,
Oh damn, memory lane.
Memory lane, man. I love memory lane. That's where our experience comes from. So, do you want me to start?
Yeah, sure.
All right, I'll get started. So, my journey with content creation has kind of always been all over the place. We did say that in future we'll do an episode on music. That one I think we should maybe prepare a little bit more deeply for, because it's such a deep topic. But that was my initial kind of exposure to content creation, was through trying to create music. I play guitar, and I like to, like when I first started, I just like to record and hear what it sounds like to help me tighten up my playing. But over time, I started to actually record songs and things like that, and that has led me down, I think, further roads of content creation. Because when you start to record like an instrument, you start to learn about how audio works, and video is very similar. It just has different names for similar concepts. But you learn that through like that initial channel of recording, like the audios, and then you go on to the video, which is something that I then dove into a little bit later in life, experimented with YouTube videos and things like that. Then I put the two together and started recording me playing guitar on video.
Nice.
And that was a lot of fun, because it was just kind of hit record and play a song that I know or something like that. But I started to wonder a little bit deeper about what kind of content can you create that affects somebody else. So it's like one thing for me to be playing guitar, it's another thing for me to be talking about a particular topic, maybe trying to answer a particular question that I've recently come across the answer for. And I think it's a really powerful channel to reach a wide audience and be able to have an impact beyond kind of what's immediately around you, especially with all the tools that are available to us these days. So I've talked about like maybe 3 different paths. There was like the YouTube video stuff, which was a little bit more talking head. Like I used to record them in the car actually to get rid of like the ambient sound.
You recorded in the car?
I recorded in the car just on a phone.
Nice.
Yeah, and I want to
That's
get into
clever.
that, like getting started and how easy it is, especially these days. But we'll come back to that subject. But yeah, I used to do like talking head videos on YouTube. I'll send you a couple links, man.
Yeah, I gotta check them out.
Yeah, yeah, and I started to get feedback from those videos from like friends of mine and stuff who were watching it, and it made me realize that there is a lane almost for everybody based on your personal experience in life that can resonate with somebody else. Even if you don't think you're having an impact, like you are having an impact, and somebody is like listening and they're taking in those ideas, and sometimes it doesn't always come back to you in the form of feedback or a comment, but you're having that impact, man. And that's part of the reason, like the whole YouTube journey was part of the reason I was really curious about starting this podcast with you, because I was like, it seems that if you do put yourself out there, you put your ideas out there, people do resonate with it.
Yeah.
But I got a little bit tired of doing just solo videos without as much feedback or without having the chance to also hear somebody else's experience. And so this format, I think, is really good that we've landed on, because we're able to have like a back and forth, maybe have a guest on as well, and then be able to shape that into something that can, you know, benefit a third party.
Yeah.
That was my quick summary of the journey on content so far. What's your experience?
Before I even get to my experience, this is very timely in two ways.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, I was talking to one of my cousins in Nigeria, and she just started listening to the podcast. Actually, she just got introduced to the concept of podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She said, "Oh, I had this app on my phone. I was going to delete it. You know, that's what it does. Oh, that's cool."
Yeah.
Oh, now she listens to podcasts.
Yeah.
Thanks to us.
Like the Apple Podcast one?
Yeah, Apple Podcasts. So she's a subscriber, and then now she's in the rabbit hole of podcast. So then we just started talking about. She's like, "Why am I doing it?" I just said, "I have no like." Besides just the fun of doing it, there's no like crazy goals of this is what would happen if I did it. It's a seed of serendipity. You never know what could happen. And so I was telling her to do the same. Like whatever you're good at, just as long as it's nothing illegal or bad, just just put it out there. Just share with the world. You never know how it comes back. And and it doesn't have to be for any goal. And that's how I started. And before we started that's the second part now. Yeah. I was telling you about a mic that I used to have in Nigeria that was broke, and it still works better than any mic that I've seen. That was content creation at the time for me. I didn't know that it was. So I would take a step back. When I was in the UK, my cousin and I, we landed upon this software called Goldwave. Yep.
What does that do?
It's for recording. And so, but we started using it for voice manipulation. Like we were making all these funny robotic voices, like just stupid kids things. We were like 14. Exactly. So it was, I didn't know what it was for, but we used to do that. Then from there, I realized I could use that to convert songs into MP3 to then send to my phone. I became really good at Goldwave. And then Goldwave obsession led to Adobe Audition. So then I started like working with like music manipulation software. So it started from, like I said, this silly toy. Then it led to this music encoding, let's just call it software. Yep. And then I started noticing all the features. Then I went back to Nigeria, then high school, and all of my friends, they were either like rapping, singing, or whatever. I didn't do any of those things. But one of them, he was really good at rapping, and then I can't remember something, we're bantering, and he was like, "Oh, like you're not even like musical or whatever." I was like, "Dude, if I really wanted to learn how to make beats, I can." Yeah. Like I won't do rap. I had tried to rap before, I wasn't very good. And he dared me, and then I was like, "Okay, challenge accepted." And I went to one of my other friends in the class who was like the kid known as the Fruity Loops King. So I told him to like give me like a breakdown, like just crash.
Shout out Fruity Loops, man.
Yeah, no, that's his name. He's a G, but yeah, he was the one that introduced me to Fruity Loops. He goes by Blue Blood, that's his musical name.
Yeah, man, it's so funny you mention Fruity Loops, because it takes me back to even before any of like recording an instrument. That was one of the first ones. I think it was like a Windows XP computer or something like that at school. Yeah. Had Fruity Loops in it.
Nice.
And you know how it like
school sounds bougie.
You know what?
Mine wasn't that cool.
No, it didn't have Fruity Loops on the
No.
computers. Oh man, people used to pirate things and put them all on the computers all the time. I remember GTA 2 was on the computers.
Oh yeah.
People would just be playing in there,
That's
getting
the 2D
themselves
version,
banned.
right?
Yeah,
GTA
the
2.
top down.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It takes me back. Also, like Jazz Jackrabbit. Have you heard of that game?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was on the computers as well. And people would play like against each other over LAN.
Yeah.
Anyways, I digress. They also on those computers had pirated Fruity Loops. This is past like the. Don't jail us is what I'm saying. We don't need any losses. But they had pirated it, put it on the computer, and I just opened it because it has a really unique logo. Do you remember what it was? Like a nutmeg or something like that. Anyways, I was just curious. I double clicked it and it had the 4 tracks, and like one of them is like a bass drum, one of them is like a snare or something, and one's like a hi-hat. And it gives you like a basic drum kit. And I remember just putting the little, I don't even know what they're called, man. The little beat markers or something.
I
you know
picture
what I'm
it, but
saying?
I don't know the name either.
I remember making like the first beat, and you can see the thing going through. And I was like, man, it's crazy that computers can make that.
Yeah.
And that's like the first exposure. But then over time, you start to learn. Okay, I can add this instrument, or I can add a live instrument rather than it just being all electronic. You start to play around with samples and stuff like that. I never got that far in Fruity Loops itself.
Man, I got deep into sampling and everything.
Even on Fruity Loops?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I became really, really good at Fruity Loops. I was bad for years. Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
it takes time.
But yeah, by the time I stopped, I was really good at it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm noticing a common thread in like both of our stories so far with content, which is just start with what you like. You mentioned that earlier. It's like just create something that you're enjoying doing anyways, and don't worry about like whether or not it's gonna reach X number of people or if whoever is going to like it. It's just useful to know the skill before you have that message in a way later on, because then you don't have to, damn, I really want to speak to a group of people, but I don't know how to do it. And then you have to learn the skills to do that. It's just nice to experiment early on and play around with some of the software, see what you can create. Yeah,
I've definitely noticed that progression in the things I create. It usually starts from, oh, this is an interesting skill. I wonder how people do it. I want to know how to do it. Then I'll start doing it. Then I'll be really bad. And then I'll get frustrated that I'm so bad at it. And then it'll become, I want to be good at it. And then once I know the basics, like just what this does, and then the next step is usually imitation. I start looking at people that that I like their stuff. Then I start like copying their style, or in terms of music, it was their sound. Like my first beat I ever made was Soulja Boy's Crank That.
Hey, shout out Soulja Boy, man.
When you mentioned the 4 sounds that the Fruity Loop starts with, that was Crank That. Dun, 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 dun. Like it was one of the presets. But anyways, that was the first thing I tried to make. Then I graduated from that to like making Timbaland, I think, style of beats. Like
so, a little bit more complicated.
Oh, I never got those ones right. In my head, I thought I did, but now that I think back at it, that was like, I never got even close to the sound.
Let's dive into what you just mentioned about like imitation. I think now more than ever, it's easier to get started with content because a lot of people are putting how to do a particular thing quite easy. Like when you were recreating Crank That, for example, you probably didn't have an example to look at of somebody who's already recreated it and they recorded their screen or something like that and they're talking through the process. But now, like if you go on YouTube and you're interested, you're like, oh, I really like how Metro Boomin beats sound. And I'm like, how does he get that sound? How does he get his bass to sound that particular way? Or like, what's his style when he's recording piano and stuff? You can actually look up a producer who has recreated a Metro Boomin beat, and you can see all the various tracks that are there. They'll talk about how they've added each layer and why and things like that. And I feel like it's much quicker process in learning, and then being able to take what you've learned from that other imitator in a way, and then implement it into some of your own creations.
For sure, I agree. Then you create from memory, and also like listening. Even then, you could not even listen much because I'm talking about when it was like you have to listen to songs on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time it comes back again, like in like an hour or 2 hours,
Yeah.
so you have to keep it in your memory and try to recreate it.
Maybe in a way that was good. You know, it trains you a different part of
It
your
did.
brain.
And yeah, and I think once I stop imitating people, then I start creating what I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm like, oh, this would sound good. I don't care if anyone likes it. I don't. It's like I start entertaining myself.
Mm.
It's like that with anything.
Yeah.
Like everything I ever create, it's like it goes from imitation and then start having fun, and that's usually the best time. That's when people then start paying attention because you're now starting to sound. You start finding your own sound.
Mm.
And then you become different. But the funny thing about finding your own sound also, by the way, is if people think it's your sound, but it's still an imitation. It's like
a
you
bunch of
mix
different
all your
imitations.
influences,
Mhm.
but because you have such a unique
Taste.
path and taste, people would never be able to trace your influences from.
Yeah, man, that's a great point.
What would be your experience with that? Like when you know that something I created was like a mix of different sources.
I know we're gonna do a whole thing on music, but I have to stay on music because this is content and music to me go really hand in hand. For me, it's varying taste in music that changes the way I create music now. So I have a huge range of likes when it comes to music. Like I'll listen to like movie soundtracks, I'll listen to hip hop, I'll listen to Afro beats, and I'll also listen to like instrumental guitar music, some slow, some kind of faster, some heavier, some just like one guitar, for example. So all of these different things they're quite different in the spectrum of like music genres, but there's some similarities in there and interesting things in all of them that I can kind of take and try and put together in one piece that is more cohesive between all of those. Like one of my favorite ways to put together two genres is hip hop beats hit really, really hard. Like the bass hits really, really hard, and they do a lot of like audio tricks in order to isolate the bass sound so it comes out and it hits. If you do the same thing with guitar, it gives the guitar a way punchier sound. So like I like to take the learnings from like the hip hop side of things, and I'm recording guitar, but I'm using the same kind of approach, but to guitar recording.
That's the best way to steal. That's what they say. Good artist copy, great artist steal.
Yeah.
I always tell people like, if you just take something someone is doing and just copy and paste, that's not that cool. But you have to take the essence of it, like the spirit of it, not the form, but the spirit, which is what you just mentioned with the hip hop stuff. Like you're not taking the exact sound, but it's like, what's the core of it? What's the soul behind this thing that makes it what it is? And then you can just transfer that over to. It doesn't even have to be music. You can take that from music to writing.
Yeah,
like
that's true. Yeah.
You can do that with so many different things. Like that's my favorite things to do now.
Yeah.
I would look at like a color, like a painting, and I'll be like, what would this painting look like in an article about tech?
Yeah.
So to the there's like two different worlds
things
that make no sense, but yeah, it's like what I like to do. Like what this podcast that we're doing, like there's so much influences. Frances was here last. She was our last guest.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you like the spirit of our brand was from when we went to a museum. Me and her went to a museum, and I was like, "This is so cool." I like.
How do these two things relate?
For me?
Yeah.
We were at a museum, and it was called, I think, the Black Vanguard. So it was this exhibition. No, well, that's not a museum. It was a gallery, but they had an exhibition called the Black Vanguard, and it was this very minimalist studio. And then there were all these black artists doing all these cool things, and they just stood out on this different walls. But I remember this particular yellow wall. I was looking right at it, and I was seeing like this. There was like a Burna Boy painting or something just right there. I was like, this is so cool. Like Burna Boy is not even here, but like his work is like shining and
stands out.
Yeah, and then whoever created this is not even like taking credit. They're not even doing anything. And then I just had that, like I want to do something where, we're not, like I'm not really the face of it, but it gives other people the platform.
Yeah.
That's why I don't know if you even noticed, but we don't have our picture on the artwork. That's why.
Yeah.
That's where that came from.
We also don't have any pictures together, man.
Oh yeah, we don't. That's true though.
Yeah, we should do something about that. But speaking of pictures, this is something I wanted to transition to as part of this discussion. So we've talked a lot about creating like audio, creating video as well, kind of in a way. Pictures is really interesting because that's a huge way people create content these days. I feel like there's the two avenues. There's like Instagram creator or YouTube/TikTok creator. We've talked a lot about what would fit in maybe like YouTube, TikTok world. What about the Instagram world? Do you think there's still room for somebody to showcase their unique talents in that world, or has it been corrupted by how like content is most commonly created? You know how we were talking about imitation before? There's almost been too much imitation of a particular style on Instagram, right? But I'm thinking there's an opportunity there, but I'm curious about your thoughts.
There's always so many ways. Like I'll give you a weird example. I created this platform when I was in Newfoundland to showcase people on Instagram. I wasn't even creating content. It was a social experiment. I had this thesis. I was like, people are so worried about being the star so much that they would accept the most, what do you call it, the weirdest things that you would not really accept. Like if I just say, hey dude, I want to post your photo on my feed, you'd be like, are you weird? Like why would you want to do that? But if you call it, this thing is helping showcase Newfoundland creators, now everyone wants to be on the same thing. And all you're doing is the exact same thing. So I was like, this is interesting. I wonder if this would actually be a thing. And I was like, I'll give myself 1 month just to experiment with this. And the thing grew. I'm not saying the name now because it was like very anonymous, and I don't want, the page is still out there.
You don't want to be linked to it?
I don't care. It was cool. Like I used to get a lot of really like feel good messages, like people like, oh, thank you for doing this. Like it became, I think that was where my sense of, oh, I want to start doing things that was selfless came from. Like before that, I used to do a lot of like businesses and side hustles that was like just for profit. But then I was like, oh, this is actually cool. Like people messaging me, they don't even know who I am. And there's some people that I don't even think they probably like me in real life, but they get featured on this platform and they're really nice to me on the thing. I was like, whatever.
That's interesting.
But yeah, my point anyways was this thing then became a website, and then it did well. Then I started getting advertisers like this Catelli's, this spaghetti
the spaghetti man?
like reached out.
Man,
like,
you got
oh.
Catelli's?
Yeah, they're like,
that's
oh, want to sponsor you. Want to sponsor you and all these things. And yeah, so then I had to learn what, I can't remember what they needed from me then, but like sponsorship package or something. I was like, this is not supposed to be a business. Like this is not that deep. But yeah, that was just an angle, and it became, at some point it grew, it got like 10,000 followers. Wow, the website was getting like 30,000 traffic from Newfoundland.
Yeah,
like
that's a lot of Newfoundland.
It was big.
Yeah.
But, and I never had to post anything. And that was then. You can still do the same version. Once again, to go back to what I said earlier, you can take the spirit of that. What are the components that made that work? One was people will always want to, I don't know, people want the spotlight on them. That's just the human nature, unfortunately. That's one. Well, no, unfortunately, I don't know. There's nothing bad with that, actually. And two is influencers. Like when I say when I build platforms, I never try to be an influencer myself. I try to be an influencer's influencer. Yeah.
But man, that's kind of the reason probably behind even like Joe Rogan's success in a way.
Yeah.
It's the same spirit. It's like you do not have to be, the spotlight doesn't have to shine on you, but you can hold the spotlight consistently on other people and still build like a platform for people to come on and share their stories and things like that, right? Yeah. I guess in a similar way, that's what we accomplish when we have guests on this podcast in a way. Yeah. And we will continue to do is
that one is more selfish though. Like I want to learn from these people.
yeah, a little self-serving, but I guess two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
I like that.
Because the people we've had on so far, and that will continue to have. There are people that I genuinely admire, and I want to learn everything. I just want whatever they have in that sense. Nana and his AI and fintech knowledge.
Yeah.
I want that, and Francis just being Francis, and then whoever else we have. Yeah.
Content creator extraordinaire. So, yeah, I was gonna go on a particular tangent about what we were talking about.
Do you?
But I'll also I'll add on an example that I've seen very recently that has stood out to me on Instagram, because when I scroll through Instagram, I'm seeing a lot of people capturing their lives and documenting their lives, which is absolutely fine, especially because it's my friends that I'm following.
Right.
But very recently I came across somebody who I don't know's account, and I thought this is really unique the way that they're going about this. And it was this photographer. She's from Newfoundland as well. I can't remember her name, but she takes photos specifically of concerts and of artists at concerts. So her entire feed, and she has a very particular style, so the feed is really well curated as well. But it's a similar idea. There's no pictures on there about her and her life or anything like that. And she's a photographer, so her business would be to take photos of people. But the way she showcases her skills is by going to concerts and taking really great action shots of artists doing their thing. And it kind of works both ways now. The artist gets a picture that they really enjoy. They're going to showcase it on their thing. And who took this photo? Wow. And her business gets a bit of a boost as well. So it's that synergetic relationship between sharing your spotlight on somebody else.
Yeah.
And then that, again, coming back and feeding to you to give you another chance to go do what you enjoy, which for her is photos and concerts. So she gets to, just live the dream that way.
I actually met a girl. Okay, so Uber started this Uber share thing. I was like, oh, this is cool. Let me try this. And I ended up sharing a Uber with this girl who does that.
Yeah.
And that was just last week, actually. I'd never heard of that concept until she told me. She was like, yeah, just go to different concerts, take photos, and then sometimes the artists will reach out. And if I really like the artist, I'll give them for free. If I don't, if they're not my favorite, then they pay for it because I have to make a living.
Charge them a little bit.
And she was like, but I never charge local artists. That's it's strictly my policy. It's always bigger artists that I will sometimes charge from. So, and that's, she does that as well.
Yeah.
But I've never met someone who I don't know someone personally. And I didn't see her Instagram. We didn't exchange. I don't know. It would have been weird. I didn't want to.
Yeah. Outside of what we're doing already here and creating a podcast and having these discussions, is there another content avenue that has you really interested right now?
That I'm interested in? Ooh. Besides this, I'm almost taking a break from content creation. And the reason, I think I always go through these cycles in life where it's produce, consume. I'm in this very much, even though we have this podcast, I'm in this consuming phase right now where I feel like I have shared, or I've at least tried to produce as much as I can in my last level, where my skill level, knowledge and everything, and I'm just trying to get to the next level and just learn as much as possible. So that this podcast, I guess, it does that in a way. I'm sharing, but I'm also learning. And then I guess when I'm learning from people, they give me way more to go research and then know more. But yeah, I'm in this level now. But that said, this whole AI thing, which was our last episode, this AI thing has given me so many different ideas of different things I could do if I really want to.
Getting easier and easier.
Yeah, I don't know which one of them I can share yet, but that's where I will stop that for now. What about you?
I'm in a similar boat. I've got two things that are kind of really interesting to me. I'm still very much interested in YouTube as a channel. I think it's super powerful, and it's really interesting that you mentioned the produce, consume. When it comes to that channel, right now I'm very much in the consumption stage. I'm trying to learn about a new industry. We're learning about how to create a podcast. I also want to look for interesting examples of content that come across as really helpful.
Dude, I will share the notion of this podcast to you soon.
Yeah.
Like, all the crazy ideas that I have.
Yeah.
We'll never be able to do all of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, continue.
Yeah. So like from that perspective, I'm very much in the consumption side, but I want to get back to the production side of that. I think there's a lot of potential in that channel still, and I don't think I explored it as much as I could have. But then the other point that you mentioned about AI capabilities, whether or not it's like rendering a video, for example, where you're not even really in it, but you've scripted it and created the concept and the message that you're trying to get across, and then you're using YouTube maybe as like a channel, maybe you're like marrying those two. That's super interesting to me as well, and I think we're going to see more and more of that stuff. I was listening to a very interesting podcast. I think it might have been it was the All In podcast. Shout out the All In podcast. Do you listen to that one?
Yeah, the one with like 4 billionaires.
Yeah, those ones. Very, very relatable podcast to be, just
Jamal,
balling out
Jason,
here. The private plane
David,
guys.
and someone else.
Yeah.
He's important to I forgot his name.
He's a billionaire anyways. Yeah. But they were talking about AI possibilities. So there's, I really should have looked these things up so I could shout the exact name up, but there's this tool available for you now that can help you render video. You know how we're talking about like Mid-Journey before, how you can render images? This will help you render videos based on text input. So you could have a script and you could also create essentially a movie that goes along with that script and never have to have a camera in your hand and never have to coordinate actors to come and play it out and like figure out all the ins and outs of actually producing a movie-like concept. The reason I think that's super important to think about and consider going forward is like for those creatives who are more interested in creating like fictional content, it makes it so much easier for you to put together a concept like that. Like back in the day to create a movie, and I'm gonna pretend like I don't even know what it takes to create a movie, but so you have your script, now you found this is gonna be the director, this is gonna be so-and-so, this person's gonna play this person's gonna play that, and then maybe you film like a 10-minute segment of what you're trying to get across before somebody's like, let's put a bunch of money behind this, let's turn it into a full movie. To get to that point where you can go and get that investment was a much more difficult road back in the day. Now you could probably do it with just your computer, a text generator, and now you have a concept for like a really creative piece that you can quickly share with people and get validation on. Similar to what we were talking about in the episode 7, we're talking about how quick it is to validate some of your ideas. You can do the same thing with your creative ideas now. And so like, I feel like we're reaching a really good stage in terms of people creating personal content through things like YouTube and TikTok. But then now we can even go to the next level where people can create concept pieces for like maybe a longer form movie type piece of content, like a really creative thing rather than maybe like a bit more like personal content, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I was trying to remember the name of the tool that you mentioned as well, but it's NVIDIA. They're the ones that created it.
Well, the chip makers?
Yeah, they power most of the AI stuff, but that's also a product I think that they're creating. It's pretty cool. It's one of the reasons, like this AI thing is one of the reasons why I'm like taking a step back and like, how can I don't just want to be doing what everyone else is doing or what I have been doing. It's like, what's the best way I can leverage this? Like, what's the play here? Almost like a quarterback. Like, let me step back for
because everybody's running all over the field right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and I did that initially. I was like tweeting about, this is cool, that's cool. I'm like, okay, maybe there's a bigger play here. So that's the phase I'm in right now. It's an exciting world. It's like, there's just so much possibilities. It's like, things that takes everyone like a year to create, now you can create in a week with the help of AI stuff. And it's like a renaissance. Like this is, if there's any time in history that this is like, it's like renaissance. Like, and that's what I've been like looking at, documentaries and history, just trying to, remember I said that before, like history doesn't rhyme. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Yeah, it's a good time to be multi-passionate.
I agree, 100%. I think it's one of the easiest times to validate ideas quickly. And yeah, if you're looking for a sign that should you create content or should you try and be a little bit more creative, this is it. This is the sign that you've been looking for. Get to it. I think it's the barriers to entry are super low now. All you really need is like a computer or even maybe a phone, and you'll probably have enough to start creating some piece of content and learning really, really quickly. Don't worry about having the correct message or saying the right thing at the right time or something like that. I think it's just as beneficial to just flex that muscle and know like, okay, this is how you do this is how you do that. So by the time you're hit with that inspirational idea that you're like, okay, this is what I want to say to the world, you already have the skills there to meet you and just continue to go right into it.
I 1000% agree. Just keep working on your craft, which is something that I actually brought down as one of the things for myself this year. But that's the only way you get better. Like, you're not what you say you are, you're what you repeatedly do.
Bro, nice one.
And I'm having to remind myself that, like, oh, I'm a writer. When was the last time I wrote? Yeah. Okay, man, you're not a writer anymore.
Yeah,
you're not a writer anymore. Until you start writing every day again, you're not a writer. So what you repeatedly do. If you like to sleep, hey, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anything, but just own whatever you are. That's the phase you are right now. Just like I said, I'm a consumer right now because that's what I mostly do. I'm reading books. I'm like learning from people. Call a spade a spade. That's consumption. However, though, me and you are fairly, we were not naturally confident, but we're fairly confident people. And we're getting this random sound today. So, anyways, sorry, y'all.
All these things, man.
We're fairly confident people now. You know, for me, we'll talk about this sometime, but for me, it took a while, and I'm sure you had your journey as well. The point I'm trying to make is sometimes it's the mental aspects that holds people back, not the skill, not anything. It's like, oh, what would my friends think? I don't think I'm good enough, or
100%.
Well, people like even this podcast. Some days I have that feeling like people are like, oh, what does it think there? They probably had a podcast so they can talk to themselves. But that's why I always start with a mission. Like,
true.
When you have that self-doubt, when you have that stuff, just have the mission. For me, that's what I do. I'm like, what are we doing this for? And sometimes your mission can be, I'm learning.
To learn something. And when your mission is to learn something, the feedback that you might get, you can detach yourself from it a little bit. Your point is to learn, right? So like, say you're afraid of putting a piece of content out because you're scared of what people might say about it. If your mission is, I just want to learn about content creation, you are succeeding regardless of the comments that you get back to it. Some of it will be positive, some of it will be negative, but in either case, you're succeeding in your mission.
I totally agree.
Which gives you that, it gives you that kick in the butt to try again, to keep trying again, because it's all just like a fact-finding mission for you at that point.
Yeah, you have to create from a solid ground, something that is not perishable. And perishable is not just food. Perishable is also something, people can take away from you. If I'm trying to let's say this podcast we started and say we want to get 1,000 listeners within like a month. If that doesn't happen, that dream has perished. Now we're like feeling sad, but we wanted to create representation. So every time we release one of these, we are representing people like us. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if we have one listener. It doesn't matter if we have 1,000 listener. The reason, the why, is still being met.
That's true, because the mission is so clear on that.
Yeah.
What I really liked when we first started talking about this concept and this idea is you said like, as long as we reach one person, we're already kind of succeeding in the mission, and I fully agree with that. And I think it takes a lot of the pressure off for us to deliver this message in a particular way when we know like, okay, we just want one person to listen to it, and we've essentially reached more than a conversation just in a room.
Right.
And so by that definition, we're already on the right path with that, which is super encouraging. And I think it's, as a creative, you need to have like that type of mindset when it comes to whatever it is that you're creating. This actually made me think of another thing, like what happens when you create something and you yourself aren't a fan of it?
You're not a fan of it?
Yeah, you don't like what it is that you've created. Have you been through something like that?
Oh yeah, oh my God. I think I talked about it. Did I when I was talking about my business? Why when I shut it down?
Yeah.
I didn't mention one component of that. We was the passion. I started the business when I was partying and DJing, and I was in that life. Then the process of building the company meant I became into self-development, and then my interest changed entirely. And I was creating this app, and I remember my mentor then. He was like, "Oh, how is it going?" I was like, "Good. We have a new version up." He was like, "Oh, how is it? Like, what do you think?" I was like, "Oh, I haven't even used it." And he looked at me. He's like, "You haven't used your own app? You're supposed to be your own number one fan." I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not into it." And then he looked at me. He was like, "Can you hear yourself? Like, I'm just not into it. If you're not into it, who is going to be into it?" Then I was like, okay. And that was like the beginning of the end of that. Like, it felt like a prison. Like, I just didn't like it. I didn't want to work on it anymore.
Yeah.
Same thing with like writing, or like, sometimes I would, like you grow, and the way people see you as is not necessarily what you want to be anymore. Like you've outgrown the version of you that people see sometimes, and you're like playing a caricature of what they expect you to be doing.
Yep.
And that's not fun.
Yeah, man. Kendrick went through the same thing with To Pimp a Butterfly versus like Good Kid, Mad City.
Yeah.
A lot of people wanted him to rap about growing up, in Compton.
Yeah.
And now he's talking about like different concepts. Some of it did, have stuff to do with Compton, but it's now he's grown out of. He's not in that situation anymore. So he has to talk about what he's going through now. That's where the content is coming from.
Yeah, rich spirit.
But you just are kind of expecting him to still be what initially drew you to him, which as a fan, I guess I kind of understand. But as a creative, you need to go where the energy is at the moment, right? So sometimes it's like you notice with your business, it's like, okay, I built this. At one point, I was really excited about this, but I've like gone beyond this now, and I want to put my energy into something that resonates with who I am now more so than maybe who I was before.
Yeah, I mean, Jay-Z said that before, the line in a song, if you want my old ish, buy my old album.
Yeah.
It's simple as that.
Yeah.
If you're a fan
it's already there for you.
Yeah, it's frozen in time. And I still do that. I listen to my favorite artists.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go on Twitter and like, oh, you need to create more of that. Just listen to that old stuff. You know, like they're not here to serve you. They are growing.
Yeah.
And that's what creation does for me, anyways. Creativity and creation is a vehicle of personal development. I think that's how I develop. I don't know how else I've grown in my life. It's always through wanting to be good at something.
Yeah.
What about you?
I fully resonate with that. I think that's what personal development is. Like you choose an avenue that you are not satisfied with your performance in.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it might be.
But for me, it's always spurred by creativity, though. Like, it's not like, it's not usually like there's an issue in my life that I want to fix. It's always I'm working on something, and this something needs a new version of me.
Okay.
I don't even know if that's normal.
I think I was thinking about the concept in a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the part to that I was relating to is like say your fitness, right? You want to improve a certain area of your fitness, like say it's your cardio or something like that. To me, it's always like, okay, I noticed that this is the level I'm at with something and I want to improve it. But the thing that changes that focus is just where the spotlight is at the moment. So for me, it's very experiential. So for cardio, for example, maybe most of the day I don't need it. But then one day I go climb a set of stairs and I'm like, I don't like how you were breathing so heavy at the top of these stairs, man. You got to do something about that. And so that's what kind of dives me into it. That's my relationship with like personal development and the areas in which I choose to focus.
Yeah.
Same thing with like a relationship or something. If I noticed, okay, I don't like the way you performed in this particular aspect, maybe that's something you need to work on a little bit more. So less creativity driven, more so driven by I did something, I saw the result of that thing, I'd like that result to be better than it is, and then I'll go down that road.
That's so interesting. I really enjoy you sharing that perspective because I know it's so different from mine, and I'm like, it's like food for thought. Like I don't know what that means for me now, but I'm definitely gonna think about that. For me, it's always creating stuff. It's that, people talk about manifestation. That's how manifestation works for me. Like I'll have an idea of what I want to do, and then I'll create an image of that person that is doing that thing in my head, and then I work towards that person.
Yeah.
So like
we should dive
I
into
change
this
myself
topic.
to that person.
We should dive into this topic. I don't know how soon.
Yeah.
But I think we should talk about that topic as well, which I think all falls into maybe like self-confidence or maybe like personal.
That was
growth
what I was
in a way.
alluding to earlier on.
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
You can't create without, as Laura Neal said, you can't do right if you're not right within. Like it starts from you, and then you bring whatever you have in you outwards.
Let's talk about that one a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
I think there would be some stuff to dive into there. But anyhow, we'll call it a podcast for that one. We kind of went all over the place with the content creation thing.
That's creation.
That's creation right there.
And that's what you get for not giving me a heads up for the topic.
But I think there was still some good gems in there.
Yeah.
Like if you could take away one sentence from this whole thing, is just start today. Start creating. Just put yourself out there, and iterate on it. Maybe start to look for feedback when you feel like you've got something, and it'll probably improve what it is you're working on now. But the trickle-down effects further from this time in your life are immeasurable. And like we're still doing the same thing now.
Something I want to say is treat your creation sometimes like a child, or even like a seed for a plant.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like it's ready for the sun, you don't have to share it with people.
Yeah.
We had 7-8 episodes of this before we released the first one.
Yep.
And that was the whole point of it. We didn't want the concept to be shaped by people's expectation or with the success or lack of. We just wanted to do it for us. So if you're someone who is not confident of sharing your stuff, that's okay. You can work in silence as well.
Amen. And share your creations with us. If whatever platform you're listening to this on has the ability for you to comment or write anything to us, please do. We'll check out absolutely everything.
We need to start doing that, because my cousin actually, she asked, was like, oh, if I want to leave a message, how can I do that?
Yeah.
There's a link on the Spotify. You can directly record, and I think the Apple Music syndicates that as well. Sorry, not Apple Podcast does that as well. YouTube, you can leave a comment. You can Twitter, Instagram. Our DMs are open. You can reach out anywhere. Mark, what's Creative Mark?
Yeah.
For you.
It's Creative Mac on Instagram.
Ola King for me. You can reach out to us. We're friendly people.
Yeah, please do. I'd be happy to see your creations and happy to share them as well. Anyways, that was Foreign Gems episode Who Knows on content creation.